like to call to order the West Orange Board of Education meeting for June 18, 2018, right here in West Orange High School. Mr. Calavano, roll call and Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Mr. Alper? Here. Mr. Charles?
Here.
Mrs. Mordecai?
Here.
Mr. Robertson?
Here.
Mr. Schwartzbaum?
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notice of meeting. Please take notice that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided for in the following manner. That a written notice was sent from the Office of the Secretary of the Board at 4 p.m. on January 9, 2018. That said notice was sent by regular mail to the West Orange Township Clerk and the editors of the West Orange Chronicle and the Star Ledger. That said notice was posted in the lobby of the Administration Building of the Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Calavano. Before we begin with the agenda, there's two items I'd like to. Mr. Rutsky cannot join us tonight. He's attending to a personal emergency. And I would like to read a quick statement on the use of live feeding. There has been some public inquiry about the use of live feeding during the Board of Ed meetings. The Board has discussed this matter and conferred with our counsel on it. The Board of Education meetings fall under the public meeting umbrella. So with that said, it is okay to live feed during the Board of Education meeting. However, we ask two things. One, that if the live feeding not interfere with the audio and video recording of what's going on here, and if it's not be disruptive to the meeting itself. Otherwise, please feel free to use the live feed. First item on the agenda, actually, let me back it up a little. I need a motion for the closed minute meetings of May 31st, June 4th, May 30th, 31st, and June 4th.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second as amended, as discussed with Mr. Calavano earlier. One of the items in the closed session with our school board's field representative did not include social media, so that correction has been made.
Thanks. Note that for the record. Ms. Mordecai? Mr. Calavano, let's vote on that.
Mr. Alper?
Yes.
Mrs. Mordecai?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartzbaum?
Yes.
Vice President Robertson?
Yes.
President Charles?
Yes. The first item underneath the superintendent's report is the recognition of the girls softball team. We're going to ask Athletic Director Ron Bly to make the presentation. Nah. Well, you're going to need it because it's going to be recorded.
Yep.
It's going to be recorded.
Okay, it's my pleasure tonight to, we're going to honor our girls softball team who captured their first league championship in the history of West Orange High School. Their coach is a young man who I guess has been with us, how long, Trosty? 5 years maybe? 6 years, okay. I recruited him out of McQuannock High School, which had one of the best softball programs in the state. I knew the head coach over there, and she recommended him, and he has worked tirelessly to get this program where it is at today. So it's a great pleasure to bring up our head coach, Joel Trost.
Good evening. First, I want to thank Mr. Rutsky, the members of the board, the administration at West Orange High School, as well as Mr. Bly for allowing me to be the head coach and always supporting the girls and basically the student athletes of West Orange High School. This is a great honor to be standing in front of you, being the coach of the First Division champs in West Orange. It's a true compliment to these young ladies sitting over here, as well as the young ladies that were here before them that led us down the right path. I want to thank, the other coaches in the building that have helped me throughout the 6 years, the parents that have always been so supportive of everything that we've done, our parent club, and there's a lot of things that go into it. Rec program, mountaintop, everything that goes involved. Starting, these young ladies were 6th, 7th, some 5th grade when I got here, and 12 of them are going to leave this year, and they get to leave as conference champs, which is fantastic. First, I would not be able to do this without my assistant coaches. First, Miss Jackie Cruz. Miss Nicole Fleck. And the man that's been with me for all 6 years, Coach Michael Marini. And now for the girls, Lexi Fiore. Melissa Callan. Issa Odin. Captain Megan White. Captain Danielle Fastigi. Captain Sienna Pisano. Nia Harper. Cameron Fiore. Sophia Scholes. The all-time career hits leader and captain, Natalie Simpson. Erin Vermeil. Veronica Cardona. Jada Stanfield Jones. Crystal Jameson.
Next on the agenda is the boys track and field team.
Before we move on to the boys track team, we have a special, what we call a Mountaineer Pride Award, and it goes to any student that has achieved something special in their particular sport, like setting a record, anything along those lines. And this year, as it was mentioned a little earlier, this award goes to Natalie Simpson, okay?
Multi-sport athlete. Great athlete.
I can just say this about Natalie, and the award says, for outstanding dedication, achievement, and service to the West Orange High School softball team. This year, Natalie became the all-time hit leader in school history, 144 hits. But in my time here, she is by far the most competitive athlete I have ever encountered, and that's going to get you through to the next level, I'm sure. Congratulations.
There you go. Wait, turn around. Do a picture. Awesome.
And again, before we go on, I want every female that's a student athlete in West Orange just to stand up for a minute. Because I got a very special announcement. Coach Blake, I want you to stand up. I want all our coaches to stand up too. Just 15 minutes ago, it was announced that the girls program is ranked number 1 out of 38 teams in Essex County. So, it's the first time we've ever won they call it the Olympic Cup. Okay, as you can imagine, Seton Hall wins the boys every year. Okay, but this year, West Orange Mountaineers girls, I'm very proud of you. It's really a special honor, and we're going to get that cup and bring it down here. Maybe we'll all take a drink out of it or something. I don't know. And just to let you know, our boys this year finished a very, very respectable 6th place out of 38 teams. So, needless to say, it was one of the best years in the history of school for athletics. 6 league championships, 1 Essex County championship, and 3 state championships. It's an incredible year. I'm so proud of you guys. And the next award, I'm going to call up our track coach. Come on up, Coach. This is Coach Jackson. This man has coached on the Division I level, coached on the college level, coached on the high school level, and I saw him last year as an assistant coach, and when Coach Pick retired, I said, this is the man that we need for this position. In his first year here, he shocked the entire North Jersey scene. We won the state sectional championship in track and field. It was a very... It was a very, very tight battle between us and perennial power Ridgewood High School. But Coach took us through, and it was a great time over there at Clifton High School. Congratulations, Coach. Now, this team has elected to, and this will make Mr. Califano very happy, they're going to get rings. So we don't have anything to present to you guys tonight, but guys, I'm really, really proud of you. Coach, take it away.
Thank you, thank you. To the board, Mr. Bly, just really appreciative of all the support that we've gotten this year. Want to call the guys up to be recognized. Want to start with our staff. Our team on both the boys and girls side is just huge, and couldn't get a lot accomplished without a great staff. So start by calling Coach Felicia Blake up. Oh, thank you. Coach Paul Chedwigan. Coach Melinda Lewandowski. Coach Mike Spadola. And Coach John Prescott. You know, winning a state sectional title, hopefully for the gentlemen that are returning next year, that are freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, they're inspired and want to continue to go on. So this group has kind of set the standard. It's been a while since we won one, I think 2007. And so just really, really excited and proud of what these young men did. Start off with Jalen Douglin. Robert Miller. Jesus Rosas. Elijah McLaren. Jordan White. Freshman Gilberto Robertson. Armani Smith. Jefferson Kajus. Nalima Fisher. Robert Perez. Abizi Anumadi. Thomas Hughes. Freshman Sanai Danny. Elijah Millington. And Timoteo Akimbode. Just one last thing. I know we're here celebrating state sectionals. We just returned from the nationals. I definitely want to thank the board for supporting both the young men and women that competed out at the nationals. It was very, very tough competition. We did have our sprint medley relay team that finished right outside of All-American. All-American at the high school level is top 6 in the nation, and they were 8th. Second fastest time in school history, and just want to kind of have them put their hands up real quick. That was Abizi Anamati, Nalima Fisher, Jefferson Kajus, and Elijah McLaren. And we would not have been able to do this without support from our athletic director, Mr. Bly, the board. We really, really appreciate you getting us down there. Very appreciative of it. Thank you. We all go up?
get in there anytime you want. On Thursday. Congratulations. Yeah, I can let you. Don't worry about it.
We're going to, before we get on to other board business, we're going to give the students and the parents who don't want to stick around for the board business a chance to leave. So if you guys want to cut out now, thank you. Great year.
Yeah, that'll cut the audience by like 80%.
Seniors will see you Thursday night at graduation.
Danielle, way to go.
Okay, for our next item on our agenda, we're going to ask Assistant Superintendent Ebony Domenez to come up and make her presentation on the Math Committee presentation. We're going to ask the board members if they can have a seat in the audience as Ms. Domenez presents a brief presentation.
Could you emphasize that a wee bit more?
I'm going to ask the math committee members to please come. Yeah, I'll have them sit here.
Cool, cool. And your little cookies there, or you can just do it right.
Hey. Thank you for coming. Hi, how are you?
Okay.
Good evening. This evening we're going to present the work of our Math Evaluation Committee. Here you'll see all of the members of the committee. We had members spanning the elementary, middle, and secondary. We had parents and our co-chairs, Darlene Berg, Imad Abu Hakme, who are our math supervisors, chaired this committee. As part of our strategic plan year 2 objective, we were charged with establishing a committee to evaluate the district's math program, grades 3 through geometry, to include a curriculum audit and recommendations for implementation in 2019. We followed a very specific framework. You'll see that the PowerPoint here is going to be much more detailed than the presentation for brevity. It will be posted, and we understand that the copies didn't make it over to the auditorium, but we'll have those available for you, if not already posted, then first thing in the morning. Here is our evaluation framework. We used an IMET tool, instructional materials evaluation tool, a grade-level instructional materials evaluation tool, equip rubrics for lessons and units, an assessment evaluation tool, and a parent roadmap. I have to, one, say thank you to this team and to all of those that you're representing. They worked tireless hours in order to complete this evaluation. Above the, I think, 25 hours that they were together with us on their volunteer time at home as well, that they placed into making sure that they were taking a great, close, thorough look at all of the math programs in the district. And they used these tools in order to really take consideration of the metrics and the outcomes that we were expecting. We're going to allow each of the committee members to present at each grade level a brief overview of their findings and then recommendations moving forward. This is a part 1 of recommendations. This year we looked at instructional materials, lessons, units, and assessments. Next year we'll look at student data and student work protocol to see if there's a gap between our instructional materials and our student performance. So I'm going to ask the elementary team to come on up.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Rodino. I'm a special ed teacher at Gregory School. I evaluated the grade 4 materials.
My name is Jennifer Paul. I'm a second grade teacher at Redwood, and I evaluated the third grade materials. Our fifth grade, thank you. Our fifth grade counterpart couldn't be here tonight. That's Brandy Brennan from Washington.
Someone's going to flip it for me?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. So for the instructional materials, we used very specific metrics that looked at all of the instructional materials, and they met all of the criteria that you'll see here. Just to sort of give it a quick overview, when we looked at some of the evidence that we found was that across the entire grade spans of grades 3 through 5, 75 to 80% of instruction is devoted to the major work of the grade, and this is well within the recommended parameters. So that was a really good finding, actually. And then when we looked at, oh, sorry. I lost my page. Hang on one second. I lost my notes. Okay. When we looked at the instructional materials for grades 3 through 5, we looked at, if you can look at some of this, the rigor and balance, the standards for mathematical practice, access to standards for all students. And what we found was that rigor is embedded in every lesson. There is an equitable balance of conceptual learning, application, and practice throughout all of the resources available to students and teachers. Students are working both with fluency and conceptual understanding and with very high quality problems. We also found that the standards for mathematical practice were evident in all lessons throughout the units. Students use viable mathematical arguments and reasoning. They use mathematical language that's explicitly taught. This happens throughout the lessons in all sections, as well as in independent practice and assessments. Extra teacher support is included, and the SMPs support major work of the grade in 95% of the teacher and student materials.
Okay. Then we took a more specific look at grade level materials, and most specifically at the algebra continuum content. And within that, across all three grade levels, we found that in the teacher instructional materials and student application resources, specific supporting evidence was found to verify guiding statements for the following identified standards in the algebra continuum. So there was conceptual understanding of the algebra continuum, applications of the algebra continuum, and fluency of the algebra continuum. And then there's evidence up there for all three grade levels. And then we looked at individual lessons. So each one of the grade level people picked specific lessons. These were within alignment to the depth of the New Jersey standards, the key shift in the New Jersey standards, the instructional supports, and the assessment. And for example, in third grade, the lesson that I specifically looked at introduced the order of operations. In fourth grade, we looked at a lesson that independently solved and critiqued problem-based tasks in division number stories. And in fifth grade, lessons independently analyzed strategies of the standard multiplication algorithm and partial products methods using an area model. And the last part that we assessed was assessment. And when we look, for example, at the focus on major work, there was evidence that included 75 to 83% of assessment points aligned to the major work. Within rigor and balance, which was another alignment criteria, the balanced assessment questions explicitly require students to explain, fluently compute, and solve single or multi-step word problems. And to emphasize the progressions, the evidence included content progressions and math representations consistently aligned through across the grade levels to the grade level standards, both horizontally and vertically. And Lisa's going to talk about our recommendations.
So even though we found that across grades 3 through 5 that did meet all the criteria and it was a very rigorous program, of course nothing is perfectly exact, and we wanted to make some recommendations that we felt would make it that would make it just even that much better. We want to continue. Our recommendation is to stay with everyday math and for grades 3 through 5, but we would like to create a clear scoring system which assigns a point value to each test question. This is not currently part of the program. We would also like to see a common elementary grading policy. And then because there's so many resources that we found in our deep dive of the materials that not all the teachers are using or are even aware of, we would like to create a portal for all the extra resources in practice to support teachers, families, and students. We thought if we could create that, that would really maximize all of that the program offers and would definitely help us lead our children to that success we're looking for. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole Eon. I'm the grade 8 math teacher at Roosevelt Middle School, and I was in charge of evaluating 8th grade math material.
I'm Christina Ferendi. I'm a special ed math teacher at Edison Middle School. I'm one of the 2 teachers. Jessica Carino could not make it tonight. She evaluated the 6th grade program with me.
I'm Ken Nolan. I teach 7th grade math at Liberty, and I evaluated 7th grade material with Katie Beagle from Roosevelt Middle School.
Okay, so before we begin this presentation, I wanted to preface that as a committee, we had a very difficult time evaluating this program, only because we had to separate what we do as teachers in the classroom from what the program provides or does not provide. So I don't want you to look at this presentation and think that it reflects that teachers are remiss in providing your students with appropriate education, but that our best practices, developmentally appropriate activities and lessons are not reflected in these findings. All right. So in terms of instructional material, all but one did not meet any of the criteria. This is explained in the following slide. So there are 3 clusters of focus standards. The major cluster, which is supposed to be 70 to 90% of instructional time, supporting clusters, and additional clusters. The strength of this program is that it has ample practice with application problems in context. What it does lack with is supporting standards do not support the major work level. So as I mentioned, the supporting standards are supposed to be taught in conjunction to support, of course, the major clusters. But a lot of times we found that this was addressed separately. In 7th grade, only 58% of the standards taught are the major work standards, which is far from the 70 to 90% that is recommended. There is an excessive amount of instructional time spent covering above grade level context. For example, the program claims that 80% of the 8th grade program addresses the major cluster, but after the analysis and taking into account that it covers it with above grade level standards, that 87% drops to 51%. Last but not least, there is a lack of progression of skills and concepts with gaps in coverage and standards. The second thing we analyze is the instructional materials, which is pretty much all minimal quality except for the conceptual understandings application problems. As highlighted before, one of the strengths is the contextualized application programs throughout the lessons and the units, but we found that the program is not scaffolded and goes straight to contextualized application-based programs without the opportunity to practice and allow students to develop mastery of skills. There's a lack of leveling for special education and diverse learners, and that there's an inappropriate progression of skills and concepts with gaps in standards. There's a lack of balance with overemphasis on developing conceptual understanding without the adequate development of procedural knowledge and fluency. When looking at lesson and units, we saw that with the alignment to the depth of the standards, it met some of the criteria, but we were not able to continue to evaluate because it failed to meet the first dimension. Some notes that we mentioned were that it addressed above grade level content. So a lot of the time spent within the grade level is wasted on above grade level content. For example, in 7th grade, it addressed 8th grade content, and in 8th grade, it addressed high school content. There was too much conceptual understanding and not enough mathematical procedural practice, and there's an overall lack of balance. And last but not least, was very difficult to evaluate was the assessments. You can see that most of these do not meet, and that is because although the assessment items reflect the rigor of the program, there lacks documentation showing adherence and alignment to standards. Assessment items include items which assess for above grade level skills and skills that are ultimately not taught within the lessons.
So our recommendations after the findings through this committee are to evaluate, recommend, and adopt a new math program for the grade levels of 6 through 8 to make sure that this program ensures instructional materials that are aligned to the shifts and the major features of the standards, grade level materials that meet the quality criteria for conceptual understanding, applications, and fluency with high quality engaging materials and assignments, lesson plans and units that align to the depth of the standards, the key shifts, and include instructional supports, as well as assessments that align exclusively to the major works of the grades by at least 85%.
Hi, I'm Alan Norville. I worked on a high school math committee, and I mostly evaluated the Algebra 2 program and some of geometry.
I'm Jessica Nitze, also a high school math teacher. I evaluated the Algebra 1 materials, and Jonathan Tick was also with us. He evaluated the geometry materials. We have good news at the high school. Our materials are fantastic. They were written with the IMET tool in mind. They are perfectly aligned. As you can see, everything meets. So I'll highlight a couple of the things that our materials do. The first line is that they promote conceptual understanding. Every single section of every single textbook, of every single chapter of every textbook, all three courses have the same exact structure. They have higher order thinking problems and challenge questions that really build and promote that understanding. The second line is that these textbooks cover the 8 mathematical practices which are so important for helping students build conceptual and procedural understanding, which involves problems involving argument, construction, and critique, and the production of models. The third row up there, which also met, regards special population students, so that's special education and English language learners. Every single section has directions of resources that you could refer to in order to help those special populations. They have study guides, they have skills practice and word problem practice, and they also have versions of worksheets in Spanish. The next one is alignment to the actual Common Core standards or the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. The widely applicable prerequisites are a portion of those standards that are high priority standards for a range of college majors and careers that have been identified, and there's perfect alignment. The focus in Coherence 1B was specifically about geometry, which focused on applications and algebra skills, which we see a lot now, those connections in the SAT, the new version of the SAT, and that also met. Focus in Coherence 1C was about using main topics from grades 6 through 8, extending them, incorporating them into new material, and they're definitely at an appropriate level of sophistication for the high school students. And finally, the standards themselves were all covered. We went through every single standard and every single part of every single textbook, and everything aligns fantastically.
We then took a deeper look in using the EQUIP rubric for the lessons and units, and we found that across the grade levels, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, that all of our standards are met and they're aligned to the rubrics dimensions 2, 3, and 4 of the EQUIP rubric. And then we looked at the assessment using the AET tool and found that all of our section quizzes, mid-chapter assessments, units reflect the problems that are presented in a textbook. We did find that the assessments lacked some conceptual understanding. They're covered in exercises within a textbook, but not many examples in the tests or the assessments. It did still meet the rubric. So our recommendations for Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry is we recommend to continue to utilize the Glencoe series for Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry at the high school level. And Imad's going to discuss the next few recommendations.
Good evening. Like our elementary school group mentioned, nothing is 100% perfect. And these are things that we have been doing, keeping in mind the shift in the assessment at the state level. So we have been utilizing the New Jersey Department of Education model curriculum and released PARC items, SAT, ACT like assessment items as well, and we will continue to do that. And with our new curriculum model, we will continue to develop and utilize and modify performance-based assessment to ensure the rigor level and prepare the students for the end-of-year assessment. And the last one, you know, looking at everything all together, and for the past year, our IMS entrance was limited to the upper math in the middle school, which is the Algebra 2. We feel confident that we can extend this to offer entrance, you know, to the IMS program at the high school for students that finish the Algebra 1 and the Algebra 2 as well in the middle school.
My name is Susan Maccabee. I'm a parent of a child at Gregory School and a child at Edison Middle School. My job was to evaluate the resources that were at home that were available for parents and to do a survey of the parents to see what other parents thought of the programs. In the elementary school level, the stuff that's available at home is very extensive. And I think that it meets very much what we want to see in a program. However, through the survey, we discovered that some of it might be hard to access for parents. It's not that the stuff isn't there either on the homeworks or online, but sometimes parents don't know how to correlate the homeworks to the resources online and get some of those, that understanding that could help their child. For the middle school, it's kind of mixed in two bags because some of the middle school does the CM3 and then the others do the Algebra 1 course. And so the portion that do the Algebra 1 course, I'll put that in with the high school. I'm lumping that together. But for the middle school, the survey results were not as clear because those two sets of people are lumped in together. So we had about 20% saying that they needed more information, and we can provide additional resources for that. The CM3, which the middle school teachers talked about, the stuff that's sent home is not adequate. It's very, as a parent looking at it, it's very densely packed worded. And then there are very few examples. So in order to help your child, you have to read like a page or two of words and then see if you can figure out how that relates to whatever diagram. And so I think that that could be much better with a new program. The high school level, they send home the book. The book has a lot of examples. There's also online tutorials and videos you can see to figure out what you need to do. So we thought that that was adequate. However, the number of parents who responded to the survey was not adequate for us to take the survey results into account. So we could use getting more survey results from the high school level in the future. So my recommendations is at the elementary school level, we have some kind of additional information put out, either videos with somebody showing how to go through and find the tutorials and find the homework and find how you correlate the homework to the resource book online, or parent math nights, that kind of thing. For the middle school, it's inadequate, and we suggest that as they did, a new program is looked into. The overall high school program seems fine, but you might want to look into doing an additional survey, see if you can get a larger response maybe in the fall at the beginning of the year or something.
Good evening. My name is Darlene Berg. I'm the math supervisor K-5. And we were very excited with the results of the survey. And the really nice thing about working with the parent group was that as soon as some of their concerns came up, we immediately started looking at finding solutions to them. So it's very important for us that the parents feel comfortable and are able to utilize all of the resources that are in the program and that are available via the online portal or the print portal. So organizing it so parents could use it more fluidly was a good focus, and we have an immediate solution, which is really nice. Through our virtual learning community, which is run through the University of Chicago, I reached out to some of the teachers that work on this across the country and also internationally. They work with the same program we do. And they had started putting together this resource, which in the upper right-hand corner is an icon of the student portal that is accessible at home. And if you are practicing things like equivalent fractions, which is taught in lesson 5.3 in grade 3, some of the extra practice or support materials available to you are outlined. The first column with the little orange icon at the top would be tutorials. So it tells you exactly where to click, what page to go to help you with that exact homework for that evening. The column in the middle with the little purple icon are Geometer Sketchpad additional practice activities. So it tells you if you want to do some extra practice, click on this icon, go to this page, you have access to that immediately, it matches this lesson. And in the third column are some of the games that practice some of that skill fluency and some of that procedural fluency, and they are also aligned to the lessons so that parents know, this is tonight's homework, I want you to do some extra practice, or maybe I, as the mom or dad, I have to look at a video to really understand how to help you with this. So I'm excited that we have this resource. We're going to build it out. I'm going to work on this during the summer and then sit with Carmine Iaculo and figure out how we can create a link on the district webpage and also each of the schools' web pages so that there's immediate accessibility for practice videos, tutorials that align with that evening's homework.
So in summary, we're going to just go over next year, our year 3 objectives, and we will just really consider that this year what we did was look strictly again at instructional materials, lessons, units, and assessments. Next year will be our phase 2, and we're going to look at student performance, analyze student progress toward mastery of the established standards, and a student work protocol where we closely analyze student work to inform next steps in instructional practice. And we may find that there's a gap between the quality of our instructional materials and how students are actually performing and are able to use those materials. So after we go through year 2, we'll look to see if there is a gap, and we may see different recommendations for next year.
So a lot of what the work that the teachers did in this first phase has to do with horizontal articulation, looking across their personal grade bands, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5. Imad and I are working very closely to look at the transition points that are very important, 5th grade to 6th, 6th to 7th, and then 8th to 9th. So we had worked this year already with a grade 5 vertical articulation process where we were visiting classrooms, we were doing site visits, and we're going to use the information from this process to continue to inform that process.
And at the middle school, as the teachers recommended, that we will research, recommend, and adopt a new math series for the 6 through 8. And just like these are some of the programs that we're considering. Achieve the Core, which is the publisher of the instrument that we use for evaluation. They do have a program for middle school that is designed using the criteria that they recommend for a math series to meet, and it's available free for anybody who wants to use it. And the other 2 programs, Glencoe is revamping their entire program and making it K through 12, and it will be released in January 2019. And I was promised by our wonderful sales representative, who we work with very closely, that he will try to get it to us as early as possible to start looking at it and examining. And the 3rd program is published by Pearson, which is called Envision Math, which is available already. And we will consider these programs definitely, and other programs that might be produced very soon.
So our action steps, where do we go from here? We're going to look, of course, at the recommendations made by the teachers, but in addition to that, because the algebra continuum starts from kindergarten onward, we're going to focus this year, the coming school year, on the professional development for the K-3 teachers. We're going to look at the PARCC evidence statements for grade 3 as they come in so that we can analyze where the standard need is. And we're going to look at the MAP data that is coming in for the spring process. And we're going to see where the needs are regarding the algebra continuum standards. And we're going to send the teachers to professional development to build capacity in those areas. We're going to continue. We had started that process this year with grade 4 and 5 teachers. We're going to continue that. Fractions, ability to scale with fractions, to do operation with fractions is key to algebra. We focused on that very strongly this year. We've gotten some really good results with that. We're going to continue that into the next school year. And there are other action steps there, but the last one, which I've already talked about, is developing that parent-teacher link to these tremendous resources that we have, just to make it easier for the parents to navigate.
And at the middle school, we did rewrite the curriculum for 6 through 8, and we will implement the new curriculum next year that will reflect the key shifts in the standards and the performance-based assessment. And we will continue. We're done implementing. We're done developing, and we will implement a pacing guide to ensure focus on the major work as recommended by the evaluation instrument, and we will continue to heavily supplement the CMP3 curriculum with additional resources until a new program is recommended and adopted. And for the high school, again, the curriculum for the Algebra 1 and Geometry were rewritten this year and will be implemented next year. And we will rewrite the curriculum for the Algebra 2, and we'll continue to develop quality lessons and units to align to the depth of the standards and meet the demand of the assessments.
That concludes our presentation, and we'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm going to do that at the agenda items. I'm going to include it in both. So we're going to take comments and quick, brief questions from the board. We'll start with Mr. Alpert.
I guess what occurs to me watching that is, how did Connected Math get purchased in the first place? Was IMET not in existence then? Was there a different standard that it did meet? That it just seems surprising that it doesn't meet on so many of those. I don't want to spend forever on it, but I was just really curious about it.
All right, so we are currently using Connected Math 3, which I'm not familiar with because I'm working in the elementary school. But when we were working with Connected Math 2 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, it was an extremely successful program. We had gotten Edison scores to 90% proficiency. So it's that transition year. So Imad wasn't here in that transition year, and I wasn't. So that's when the adoption of Connected Math 3 rolled in.
Okay. And my other question is probably for you too, actually, which is, sorry, as a parent, it seems like there's a big disconnect, to say the least, between parental opinion of everyday math and educator opinion. So if you could talk a little bit about that disconnect and why it seems that it's meeting all of the goals, while to parents it seems, wait, why do we have to learn a third way to multiply, or what have you?
So when Common Core came into effect around 2012, it resulted from an analysis of how math was taught, basically in the United States. It was a huge undertaking. It went on for years. It involved parents, educators, professionals. The idea is to recognize that math is not just arithmetic. This huge push towards analysis, reasoning, critiquing, developing professional arguments and sustaining that understanding has to start as early as kindergarten. So you're using those critical thinking instructional strategies that did not exist the way we learned math for most parents who learned math. This is something that grew out of the late 80s, the early 90s. It's had a slow roll, and it came to a point because we were, as a country, falling behind in math scores. But if you look at the individual states like New Jersey, Massachusetts, we score very well on the P's and the international. And it's in those states where there's this really strong emphasis on state standards that pushed these skills. And so the country as a whole is kind of caught up with that and is pushing forward with that. So it does seem foreign to parents because it is a relatively new push in mathematics for this critical thinking and reasoning.
It sounds like the disconnect is more with the for the parents, it's more with the standards than with the specific program.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mr. Albert? Mr. Mordecai?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for this presentation and for working on the committee. As I shared with you earlier, I was never an everyday math fan, so you're going to have to bring me along. Do we still have the math parent nights? Because I know we used to have them on a regular basis. Can you speak to that a little?
I don't know which one's live. We do at Gregory. I can't speak for every elementary school, but we do have we've morphed it into math and literacy night, but
okay.
That answers your question. I'm a huge everyday math fan, so I would love to bring you on board.
I was one of the members of the Parents Against Everyday Math Coalition going way back. So
I was one of the teachers who piloted the program too. So
I remember. I was on the board for that. Big fight for me. I'm a Singapore math girl.
Okay.
So as far as the math parent nights, Mr. Mendez, is it possible to increase the number of nights, and even if it's at 3 out of 7 schools, to make sure that all 7 schools can attend? That would be good.
The survey results were definitely in favor of having both more math nights in general. Like the family math night at Gregory is awesome, but it doesn't explain our math program. It is fun math activities to engage the kids in doing mathematics. It doesn't have a component for explaining to parents how we use it, or what the purpose is. So it's just a fun night. The survey said that people would like both to continue that kind of thing, but also to have a night where maybe we have some of our administrators who know the math program explain how to use it, how to access the resources, and perhaps have what some of the terminology is that their kids might be getting, so that the parents understand where we're coming from, not just encouraging the kids to enjoy math.
Thank you. I note that there are only 2 parents on the committee. I would have liked to have seen more parents, and maybe one parent from each level, 1 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high school. And I know you being on there, you cover elementary and middle. Is the other parent here tonight, or no? He wasn't able to make it?
No, he was not able to make it. And I think I was quite disappointed as to the parental responses. We got 134 responses to our survey out of our entire district.
Wow.
So I was quite unhappy. It was about 3.7% of the elementary population, 3 of the middle school population, and under 1% of the high school population.
I saw that, 15 from the high school.
Yeah.
So at certain intervals, can we keep doing surveys to engage other parents? Because it would be good to have that feedback.
I think that's good. Also, I think the fact that parents see things differently. One of the things that we discovered is the teachers see these tools every day, so they're used to it. Oh, I just do this or that for it.
Mm-hmm.
The parents don't, and it might be once a month that they have to go and find something, and some of the stuff it can be confusing if you're not using it all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think so the parents see a different side of it. And that's where we're working on the extra tools to get us in line.
Okay. And my last comment is, I noted that there's a special ed math teacher at K to 5 and 7 to 8, but there wasn't one for the high school component. We'll have that in next go-around, or they just didn't speak? It'd be good to learn about what's happening at the high school for spec ed students
Yeah,
in math.
well, definitely. Well, Nicole teaches the 8th grade, which has part of it is like some of the high school curriculum, and will definitely include more teachers from the. We knew that the focus was going to be in the middle school, and that's why we have so many teachers from the middle school. But for the future, definitely. And the special ed teachers do attend the math department meetings with us, and they are in the loop, and they are up to date with the changes in the curriculum and
So you're able to get that feedback.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And I guess at some point I would like to hear from, I hate to pick on him, but I see Principal Fitzgerald in the audience, since Ms. Berg mentioned math at Central 6. So, yes, would love to hear from him at some point.
Thank you, Ms. Mordecai. Mr. Schwartzbaum.
Mr. Fitzgerald will share. He was a part of our math committee as well. His background is math, so he did sit and participate through the whole committee.
Exactly. I told you I was wet. I got caught in the rain. I was here some 7 or 8 years ago when they did CMP 2 and moving into CMP 3. There have been some changes that have been made both in Common Core and also New Jersey State Learning Standards. In Common Core, they changed 17 standards that went from that was in 7th grade to 6th grade, which was pre-algebra standards. So some of the gaps that you'll find in these findings are directly related to the switch that they made in Common Core to New Jersey State standards. So, you know, when we want to give some historical perspective, that's it. It's not that it's a bad program, it's just not meeting the needs of the students at this current time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schwartzbaum, anything?
First of all, I wanted to really congratulate everyone for working. I counted 22 people, so it's very, it's important that everybody was involved. The question I have is in regard to the middle school, because the middle school, from the criteria and the assessments, it didn't meet. So, but there's a new program implementing. So, if you looked at the criteria and the assessments based upon the new program, how would that fall in? Would we be meeting everything? Yes, the new curriculum. Yes.
Well, the curriculum is independent of any series that we'll use. It's based on the standards. So the standards are covered, and like we said, one of the recommendations is to continue to heavily supplement, which we have been using for the past couple of years. And we will continue to do that. One of them is Glencoe. One of the series that we have is Glencoe, and I got the sales representative to give us like free access for the online components, and we send the teachers for training to unpack the standards and training to use other online components for both CMP and Glencoe to supplement and generate material. And they have been working almost in every single PLC meeting throughout the year, developing these activities and utilizing the resources. And we'll continue to do that, and whatever comes our way, we utilize. And there is no doubt that the standards are addressed and met. And the curriculum, like I said, the curriculum was restructured based on the standards. Regardless of what series we're using, we're meeting the standards.
Okay, good. So, and the last thing is that I know next year you're looking at actual scores, but we have historical data, and looking at the data from the various test scores, how that relates to the various criteria and what we can do to get a heads up, not waiting for a year to say what are the results going to be. We do have some historical data points that we can be using.
Well, we're definitely utilizing the old data, but just keep in mind that the shift in the assessment itself, the previous data was NJASC, now we're dealing with the PARC assessments, and the district is started to utilize MAP assessment, which is a wonderful tool that will definitely help us at the end of this year establish a baseline for growth and monitoring individual students' progress and the overall progress of the grade level and the subject material. So we are utilizing everything and will continue to utilize, and we're not going to wait 2 or 3 years. We're using every single piece of data. And like I said, I think one of the best thing that we did as a district is to implement the MAP assessment, and it's going to produce very good results for us and helpful and meaningful data.
Good. So good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Robertson.
All right. First of all, thank you very much for the tremendous teamwork that went into this, and it's really impressive. I also particularly applaud areas where, not just the parent input, but understanding the parents' need to align the support with the actual lessons, particularly for elementary school. It's like, hunting through a wilderness. Okay, well, we went to Khan, but this lesson didn't really align with what the teacher was teaching, or went to we had 1 billion links, 1 billion sites, and nothing ever perfectly aligned, even if it was on the same subject matter, because the teacher may be teaching it a certain way. So I applaud that. The whole thing, this is really, really impressive. Everyday math. I'm sorry. It'll take you a long time to bring me on board for that. Let's go. I'm going to get a little granular. One of the things that was promised to us that helps kids so that kids can find the route that's easy for them is to teach, and I'm saying this, my daughter and my son had great teachers. I loved them, but also listening to feedback from parents and friends. You're supposed to be teaching, it was my understanding, what was promised to us, the traditional methods alongside the everyday math methods so they can pick and choose. Doesn't happen consistently. May want to look into that. And things like lattice math, gosh. It was an ancient Chinese method, and there's a reason they abandoned it. They put out 10 times more engineers than we do. Okay, so still not a complete fan. Maybe it's the delivery, but if you are doing the traditional alongside, that's great. Then there were some things that came across. I'm glad, the greater depth in fractions, 3 through 5, excellent, because that's really the basis for ratios, equations, and everything from then on. It's really at the heart of algebra, right? But they were teaching things like the quick common denominator versus least common denominator. So you'd end up with a problem where you actually hadn't simplified. And I thought that was a major issue. This is going by even the sample problems that were given from the instructional materials. I'm like, what? Come on. No, I'm sorry. So those are some issues. Get a little granular, but these were things that we actually, came across. Logic and reasoning. I felt like they're just, when it comes to critical thinking, that it just wasn't being delivered the way it could. I think that there are some things that could be, I don't know whether it's through teaching code or whether it's through introducing probabilities earlier, but there was just a lot of aspects. Excuse me, the standards, okay. I'm sorry? Okay. But the main thing, my main concern in 3 through 5 was weak on pre-algebra. Pre-algebra, when my son first started at Mount Pleasant, they were actually introducing pre-algebra concepts as early as 3rd grade. And I didn't see that as much when my daughter was there. And I feel like that then, and it also didn't align with what was going on with science. So there was a little weakness in the pre-algebra concepts and in data analysis. So, those are areas I felt could just be strengthened. Middle school, I know Mr. Fitzgerald is a math guy, and I know you already have talked about how you want to retool middle school, because I just felt like the rigor and the level of preparedness that was needed to lead them to high school wasn't necessarily there, and obviously you agreed with that as well, that there needed to be more pre-algebra and more algebra infused in 6th grade, and that just the skill level, it just wasn't there enough. from a process standpoint, oh, also for middle school and high school, given the parent supports for elementary school, is there ever a thought about having better online resources that directly align with the lesson plans? So that you want the kid to have extra practice, the kid wants to have extra practice, you can go right to this that aligns with how that subject matter is being taught. Is that part of the plan? Yes. Okay, good, because that's a major challenge. Also from kind of a process standpoint, from a content standpoint, it would be great to see, and maybe this is all part of it, the retooling, more real-world problems, bringing in more of the kind of physics-oriented, chemistry-oriented, and accounting-oriented problems.
Next year, for the first time, we will have a department meeting between the math and the science departments at the high school, where teachers will start collaborating and working and designing classroom activities for both the math and the science, utilizing real-life applications. I'm a science person as well, so I'm a big fan of that, and finally we're ready after rewriting the curriculum, and we know exactly what we're teaching, and the PACE guide is going to be clear, and the lessons are aligned, and we'll try to align them with the science and have some lessons designed and taught in both departments, and
Brilliant.
Okay.
Glad to hear that. And last, from a process standpoint, I too would like to have seen more parents involved. There were even parents who are math teachers in public schools who were not involved. And it'd be great if we could open up that door a little bit more. We have a brain trust out there. And for people who are kind of on both sides of those fronts, that's a lot of really great insights. So, but anyway, overall, awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming, because this is a well done job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. I just wanted to echo my colleagues' comments and thank the committee for the hard work. It's certainly nice to see a good cross-section of people and parents and teachers and administrators. So congratulations. Well done here on the presentation. I do want to open up to the public in a few minutes, but I want to finish the HIB report before I open it up to the so if Mr. Calvano can pass out the HIB report. We'll finish this real quick, and then we'll move on to public comment. If anyone has any comments or questions, please raise them. If not, okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the questions from the public on agenda items. But before we do that, I want to note on the record, we are pulling an item under finance, item number 2. We are pulling that off the agenda. Page 9, if you have the agenda in front of you. So that item is off the agenda. We're going to take questions from the public on any agenda items. Please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Calvano is going to work the clock. Thanks.
Hi, Rachel Gordon, 8 Meeker Street. And they are right that Connected Math 2 was like pre-Common Core, and it aligned very well with those standards. And then when they changed it, they really the company tried to do too much for it. Okay, so I have 4 main comments as a middle school math teacher and a parent of an elementary school and a middle school student. I did not hear in the plan, so I thank you for all your hard work. Maybe next year I could be on the committee. So let's see. First, differentiation, especially in the elementary school. Did not hear, because in the middle school you have, the honors, and you have, then you have certain tracks, and it's like this whole chart. But in the elementary school, if a child's in, say, 3rd grade and they're ready to do more, and they're not necessarily, then they get 100 on every test, is there some differentiation worked in there? And also, it seems like we have ELL and special education techniques, and everyday math has a lot of manipulatives and a lot of things, and I think those are all good things, but I'm just, wondering where we can differentiate more within math in the elementary level. Second, I am really, really glad that you are going to look at alignment, because as a parent of a 7th grader, I saw elementary to 6th to 7th, teachers were not necessarily talking to each other, and then they didn't know where the gaps were for certain things, and so I think that's a really, really important thing, so I'm really glad that you're looking into that. Especially with all the changes with the Common Core and things going down from 6 to, from 7 to 6 and various, 5th to 6, it's like very important. Third, okay, I still have a minute. All right. Parents, we're not also addressing, a lot of parents have huge math anxiety, and so they're not like me, who's going to be up here and actually understood, except it went really by fast, so I'm glad that it's going to be up on the thing so I can look at it in more detail. So I think there are things that we can do to help parents, like having informational things for parents, and maybe parents who do feel more comfortable with math, like could volunteer as well as administrators, because I think it's really important. There's also Joe Bowler in Stanford is doing some fabulous work about growth mindset and about how parents can help their kids and really, really look into, like, they can help their kid, by having them explain and not saying, oh, I'm stupid at math or I can't do math, because that gets kids into a mindset that they can't do math. And really, really quickly, if I may, MAP. Love that, if we're doing MAP, so parents didn't get to see the second round, and I was told that we would get with the report cards the 3rd round, but it would be nice to have seen that second round in February. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Anyone further?
Hi, my name is Melissa Evans. I live on North Coin Place. I have a 5th grader and a kindergartner in Gregory. I am trying to be very open-minded about everyday math. However, the few times that luckily my daughter gets it, my older one, so she doesn't need a lot of my help, but the few times that she has needed it, I've finished the problem and she's still like writing down the lattice. So it takes a lot longer, and I do have to spend time on YouTube finding videos that I can understand so I can help them. So the idea of having videos on your revised website would be really nice and very helpful. And I do find sometimes the website is hard to navigate from a user perspective. So cleaning it up and making it a little more direct would be very helpful. Did I take the survey? No. Reason why? When I went to try to take the survey, the link didn't work. It said the page did not exist. And I will admit, I didn't go back. I completely forgot until tonight that, oh yeah, there was that survey, just because I couldn't get on it the one time I did try. So you might want to just double check the links when you do send them out for surveys. And that's really all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of the meeting. You want to answer?
I'll address the questions about the differentiation and the ELL, special ed. I'm not sure what. So everyday math across grades 3, 4, and 5 is really superb in that area. I am a special ed teacher. Differentiation is available at every level so they offer a readiness activity for some of those students that might not be quite ready to enter into the learning for the day. They offer extra practice for those students that need, and they also do offer an enrichment activity. That's every single lesson. That's in the manual. That's usually, for enrichment, it's always an extra activity, a project, something that can to challenge the students further. That's available for every single lesson. Every single lesson has ELL and special education sort of adjusting the activity, ways that we can meet all of our learners. There's language development. There's adjusting the lesson. So I think that's actually really great materials that's there. I think it's strong. I could see if, for sure the readiness and the extra practice, but the enrichment is strong too. There's a lot of materials available for the students through the teachers to meet those and challenge those students. So if your child is not being challenged, that's definitely something you would want to bring to the teacher because the resources are available. Parent anxiety. I'm not really sure how to address that except that I understand that it's a real thing. And I piloted the program so many years ago and we were anxious because, you know, I learned math just like you did and it's very different. But math nights, so hopefully we'll bring that to all the districts. Every unit in Everyday Math has a family letter that gives some pretty good information for the parents. It highlights all the vocabulary that will be used in the unit. It has all of the answers to the homework to avoid those like absolutely, you know, freak out nights where the kid's not knowing how to proceed and the parents don't know how to proceed. The answers are available. There are online resources. Let's see. For the homework, I'm not sure, like this is the thing that parents, and we need to do a better job, I guess, of relaying this information. There's that SRB icon on every single homework page that will tell you exactly where to go. It'll say, like, it's a little sort of picture, and it'll say page 153. And it tells you exactly where to go in your child's reference book to find, like, a tutorial. You don't need to go to Khan's Academy. I mean, it's great, but it does not directly meet the needs of our classroom. But the materials are there. And your student knows this, even your kindergartner, for sure your fifth grader, if they have a journal page for homework, the SRB icon is at every single spot in the page. It tells them exactly where to go to help themselves first. And they are taught this at the kindergarten level. So we can't, I heard one of the moms say, like, she would like us to clean up the website. We can't really clean up ConnectEd, although we are able to make suggestions, and I do all the time. But that's not on our end. What we can do a better job of is making that parent resource that we talked about and sort of streamlining all the information. We could also make sure, let's see, I think that's all I wrote. We can do a good job of making sure that you're aware of how to utilize the ConnectEd. You're not the first parent that said it is not necessarily so user-friendly. We have a different lens at school, so I'm not even that familiar with what you're having difficulty with. So conferences, I know that, I mean, I can only speak for myself and my school, but I know that, you know, all my colleagues are available. Email the teacher, let them know that you're having this difficulty. I'm sure that they would, you know, do their best to try and make this information available to you. There was one other thing I wrote down that I wanted to address. I don't know what it was. Did I miss something? Okay. What'd I miss? I guess I didn't write it down.
There was the one concern about all the different methods being
Right.
taught, and sorry, there was the one concern about all the various methods being taught to add, to multiply, to subtract, and divide. There's actually reason behind that. All of the methods are there. The students are always given the option to use whichever method they want. Within the daily lessons, they may have to actually prove that they can use the specific method that we have just taught within that lesson. However, within the assessment, it's always a choice at the end of the unit to use whatever method they would like. As far as standards go, I know from when I taught fifth, it's a standard to have to master the traditional multiplication in fifth grade. So all your different methods work up to getting you there, but we teach them all because we have to hit those standards. So as the kids are learning and progressing, the scaffolding is there to give them all those different options. They can pick whichever ones they want to succeed with.
So unless the lattice night was specifically that homework was solely on lattice, your child was choosing to do lattice because that's her preferred method. That's why, most likely. Unless there's one homework where it's just lattice, but if it was just straight up multiplication and she was choosing and taking a really long time, it's because she liked that method better. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is first reading. I'm turning over to our policy chair, Ms. Mordecai.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Charles. Tonight, this is the first reading for our data privacy and security policy, policy number 6142, period 11. And this is for first reading only. We take comments on second reading and revisions. So I'd like a motion, please, to pass this policy on first reading.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Calvano?
Mr. Alper?
Yes.
Mrs. Mordecai?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartzbaum?
Yes.
Vice President Robertson?
Yes.
President Charles?
Yes. Continue on with the agenda. I need a motion to move Section A, Personnel, with the addendum.
I'll make a motion.
A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion from the board? Seeing
Yes.
none?
Mr. Charles?
Yes.
I have a few abstentions. I'll share them with Mr. Calavano as they're voluminous, or there are quite a few substitutes on the substitutes list who donated to my campaign in the past, and I just want to make sure there's no conflict there.
Sure. Mr. Calvano can note that for the record. Mr. Calvano, let's vote, please.
Mr. Alper?
Yes.
Mrs. Mordecai?
Yes, with abstentions.
Mr. Schwartzbaum?
Yes.
Vice President Robertson?
Yes.
President Charles?
Yes. Need a motion to move Section B, Curriculum and Instruction, with the, there's no addendum, just the Curriculum and Instruction, Section B, please.
I'll move.
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion from the board?
Yes, please.
Mr. Robertson?
In the curriculum we're approving tonight, understanding that it's been in evolution for some time, because there have been some changes, some improvements, and it's a living these are living documents. It would be, I would like to have some sort of summary of what the improvements and changes have been, because there have been various topics that have come up, whether it's in ELA 628. We had talked before about, improving grammar as well as at the high school level. We had talked before about the fact that there were, Latin and Greek roots that were supposed to be taught, but it wasn't really delivered. So I'd like to just be able to get a summary of what, not right now, but what changed, what hasn't changed, maybe a brief presentation or summary later on. And then looking at areas where we had some challenges, like AP Physics. Got a lot of bright physics students, but we weren't delivering AP Physics very well based upon the scores. And I'd like to know how we've improved that, what we've done in addition to beyond adding the honors physics as an additional step towards AP Physics. So just to get kind of a top-line summary on each of these areas, what's changed, what were the improvements, and were some of the earlier issues, how were they addressed? That's all. Thank you.
Note that for the record, please. Mr. Robertson, your request. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion?
Yes, for just one comment. I'd like to thank the members of the Future Ready Committee. I see Mr. Santiago here. Many of us, and Mr. Fitzgerald, many of us worked hard every week for two or 3 hours each session, just going through all the applications and all the points for this. Also thank my colleague, Mr. Alper. It's his first year on the board, so of course we've buried him with work. So thank you for all your hard work. There were a lot of meetings, and everyone showed up and really committed to this. I'm looking forward to having Edison be the first school in the district to be Future Ready certified through this program with the NJIT. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Calavano, let's vote.
Mr. Alper?
Yes.
Mrs. Mordecai?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartzbaum?
Yes.
Vice President Robertson?
Yes.
President Charles?
Yes. I need a motion to move Section C, Finance, with the addendum.
I'll make that motion.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Item number 20. What is the amount?
Mr. Calavano, item number 20, page 11.
500,000. It's in the resolution. It's on page 12, up on top, second paragraph.
Correct. Any further discussion from the board?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know we don't have the financials here, but I recall that it was somewhere in the order of magnitude about 1.2 million to 1.5.
It may be a little less now. This is the 500,000 from the additional state aid we received in the current year that we all agreed to dedicate it towards the bubble.
Okay, but I'm saying, what I'm questioning is this year's budget, based upon last month, I recall, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there was an unencumbrance, and given that we're almost towards the end of the fiscal year, it was in the order of magnitude of approximately $1.2 million. So that money can be put into reserve.
That'll go towards our regular reserve. If you recall, during budget time, we're probably going to have less than, I think we have about $450,000 sitting in reserve, and we are allowed to keep up to 2%. And for this type of this size of a school district, we should have a little bit healthier of a balance than $450,000. So any monies that are available out of this year's budget will go into that surplus.
Okay, so this is going into capital versus...
This is going capital for that purpose, correct.
The operating reserve.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion from the board?
Yes, please. A
Mr.
couple of
Roberts.
things. Items 5 and 6, Meth Fuzzle and Werbil. Understanding they're doing a tremendous amount of work as we reviewed cases recently. Just would like to get on a regular basis more special services legal updates so that we can be more on top of things and do a better job in terms of projecting what the budget needs are versus the actual cost. Even understanding that now it's going to be capped as a not to exceed $150,000. Still would like to get regular reports. On number 4, the contract allows for us to assess as we go along and make a change if we need to. We do currently have a conflict counsel as well, and so I just want us to revisit that as needed and just make note of that for the record. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Any further discussion from the board?
One more. I just want to highlight item number 21, just to point out that after talking about this for a while and attending some meetings and a lot of discussion in a lot of places, that we're happy that we're going to become a member of the Fair Funding Action Committee to help work toward fair and equitable school funding.
That's correct.
And to Mr. Alper's point, that also means that we've had parents come up to the mic before and taxpayers to talk about the need for the board to participate in actually lobbying Trenton and doing greater advocacy there. This is, in fact, going to be that avenue for us to lobby and advocate.
We have been, Mr. Roberts.
We have been, but
I actually
not
attended the New Jersey Legislative Day this year, on May 17th, and have attended it in the past. And Mr. Alper and I both attended the school funding meeting this year, which was held in West Orange, right here. And last year, you and I both attended the school funding meeting last year, held by Sheila Oliver. So we have been attending. Maybe say attend more.
I didn't say we haven't been attending. We have, in fact, been attending. We've been engaged in conversation. But I feel like this move helps to take us to a higher level in terms of a concerted effort in advocacy versus some of the meetings that felt more like we were kept recirculating the same issues that around trying to divide up the same pie. And I think that this is to me, this represents a paradigm shift and a much more concerted effort in that and commitment in that direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
good point.
Good point.
Okay. It is. This is spearheaded, though, by Chesterfield Board of Ed, so this is a very different committee. So, yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Caravano, let's vote then.
Mr. Alper?
Yes.
Mrs. Mordecai?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartzbaum?
Yes.
Vice President Robertson?
Yes.
President Charles?
I am yes on everything except for 5 and 6. And just for the record, we took number 2 off.
Yep.
We pulled it off the...
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I need a motion to move Section D, reports.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Any board discussion?
No, thank you.
Seeing none, Mr. Caravano, let's vote.
Mr. Alper?
Yes.
Mrs. Mordecai?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartzbaum?
Yes.
Vice President Robertson?
Yes, I'm going to amend one, though. I'm going to say yes on everything except for number 6.
So you're going back to the last vote?
Going back to the
I'm
last
sorry.
vote?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was the
This
last
is
one.
on
I
reports.
apologize. That's the reports one. I apologize. Yes on that, on the reports side.
And President Charles?
Yes, on reports. Next item on the agenda is reports from The board members, we'll start with Mr. Alpert. Anything?
Yeah, a couple of things. Back on June 7th, Ms. Mordecai and I went to a Perspectives on Park roundtable in Bloomfield that was put together by the Department of Education and Save Our Schools New Jersey. I was really impressed with how much they listened and how deeply they really wanted us to get into the process of what the current assessments look like and what they should be. Hopeful that it's going to lead to both short-term and long-term fixes. I've got a son in the class of 2020, which has been particularly ill-treated, I would say, by the way the state has handled this and given guidance. So they're looking for some solutions for that now, and that should be good. More recently, on the 12th, the high school dedicated its brick walk around back, which I think people will see as they walk into football games and stuff this year, and I look forward to seeing that grow. That's great. And on the 13th, I was lucky enough to see the high school senior clap out in person, which is just the start of a great new tradition that Project Graduation through Paula Healy and Robin McAnally began this year. I just want to thank them for bringing it to West Orange and thank Mr. Moore and all the staff members at the high school and at the elementary schools who were able to get together and make that happen. It was really great to see that and to see just the emotion, and the kids really liked it. Absolutely.
Ms. Mordecai, anything?
I just have one thing. Just like to invite parents and students to an event that's happening on Saturday, June 30th from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. It's a Finding and Winning Scholarships event, and it's being hosted by North Carolina A&T State University Alumni Association. It is a free event. It will be held at St. Paul Baptist Church, 119 Elm Street in Montclair. And it's June 30th, so it's just next week. If anyone has any questions, please go to the website, www.njaggiealumni.org. But it should be a very informative event, and it's, as I said before, it's free. Normally this funding person charges, so this is a great opportunity for all parents whose kids are going off to college. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mordecai. Mr. Schwartzbaum?
Just wanted to congratulate all the high school seniors who are graduating and looking forward to Thursday night's graduation.
Yes, sir. Anything further?
That's it.
Mr. Robertson?
I had the joy of attending a number of awards and recognitions for our high school students. The senior night was, as always, just a really beautiful celebration of our students' achievements, and I forget what the final number was, but I want to say we were about 160,000 or so in scholarships that were awarded that night, ranging from Air Force ROTC to our own education fund to just so many community groups and scholarships that came under that umbrella, and additionally including Unico, who seems to be pretty much at everything and helping out with Frank there. And it was really a glorious night, not only to honor the students, but to really see the wealth of dedication and involvement of the community and community organizations, Rotary clubs, so many. It was beautiful. Two, I've got to participate for the first time as a parent. Been to the Rho Kappa Honor Society and the National Honor Society events before, but it was good being there as a parent this time and seeing my son and his friends, as well as the seniors who are graduating, and those are great celebrations as well. Attended and presented the board's certificate to Matt Hassick for his Eagle Scout ceremony. And some may recall Matt was certainly one of our he was a star in both science and math, and as well as in music, and he and one of the other students had a patent or potential for a patent that's still out there for the fish tank filter that they created. Also went to the African Heritage Organization's Menu Cook, where the African Heritage Organization awarded its 4 scholarships. Normally it does it at our event. We just ran a little behind this year. And I should have written down the names of all the students. I know that Nia Sorbino and Gina Sturdivant were 2 of the 4 who received scholarship awards of $1,500 each. And on that last Friday, the African Heritage Organization I attended as one of the representatives for an awards given for the Orange Soiree that's in its 5th year. where they gave awards to a number of community groups in the oranges, and the West Orange African Heritage Organization received one for its contributions to education through the tutoring program and the scholarship program, et cetera. And it was an honor to be a part of that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. I'd have a few items myself. First, I'd like to read a letter we sent to Senate President Stephen Sweeney. On behalf of the board, we sent that. Mr. Calvin, I have to put it on the record. Dear Senate President Sweeney, on behalf of the West Orange Board of Education, please accept this correspondence in support of passing Senate Bill Number 2, which will phase out adjustment aid and will eliminate growth caps so that school districts, such as West Orange School District, with growing enrollment, can receive additional state funding. The current funding system has unfairly prejudiced a number of schools within the state, including the West Orange School District. The board fully supports the passage of State Senate Bill Number 2 as a means to rectify the severe underfunding that our school district has received under the current funding scheme. That was sent to Senate President Sweeney today in support of the funding formula.
Excellent.
Also, I want to wish, last meeting I was sick halfway through, but I want to wish the LGBT community a happy Pride Month. And I'm looking forward to graduation Thursday night and seeing what a good night that is, as usual. Next on the agenda, our next board meeting is held 6:30 p.m., closed session, and the public session 8 p.m. on July 16, 2018, right here at West Orange High School. And next is petitions and hearings from the citizens on any subject. Please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Mr. Calavano will work the clock. You will have 3 minutes. Seeing anyone? Thank you.
So as always, I write these things down so I don't mess it up. Susan Maccabee, 2 Mountain Way. I just want to take a few minutes to recognize our retiring principal, Michelle Thompson. My oldest child started at Gregory Elementary School in the fall of 2011. Mrs. Thompson is the only principal I have had. The first few years I was quite intimidated by her. She has a great deal of presence. As time goes on, I have been in the school more and more and seen other sides of her. In the past 2 years, I've had the pleasure of working closely with her as the PTA treasurer. First, she is completely dedicated to our children. She comes in early, stays late. She is out in the kiss and go lane every morning. I have seen her on those cold, rainy days come in frozen. She is kind. She is greeted by our children with hugs and smiles. I have had days when I've had to hand my screaming first grader over to her, and she calmly took him, got him inside with someone who could calm him down and get him into his classroom while I stayed around the corner and listened to him crying. I have always felt my children were safe with her there to look after the school. She is also very funny. She has so many stories, I would gladly buy the book. I want to thank her and anybody who was part of the process of bringing her to our school. The new principal will have large shoes to fill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone further?
Good evening. Michaela Bennett, 35 Old Indian Road. I'll be very quick. I've asked 4 or 5 times for Mr. Rutsky's resume. I know it's open public record. And anybody in the community should be able to receive it. He's a public official. You've hired him. We should be able to have a copy of his resume. So I don't know if you, as his employer, could influence us getting a copy of his resume, but I would appreciate that. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone further?
Jan DeRosa, Manga Road. I'm an employee of the West Orange Board of Education, but tonight I am exercising my right to speak as a resident and taxpayer. My comments should not be held against me as far as my employment is concerned. Tonight I have some questions and suggestions. I did have one for Mr. Rutsky. I'll defer. Do you listen to yourself? The answer is no. On April 25th, 2016, WOEA members came to this microphone speaking about how they felt disrespected and ignored by administration. Some of you commented that you were unaware of these feelings and asked for action to be taken by administration. That was over 2 years ago. Yet in the past few weeks, the ESL presentation was brought before you without significant or meaningful staff involvement. Mr. Robertson, you asked for staff to be involved. Spectators clapped. But you really did not ask for anything other than that which should have been happening routinely for the last 2 years. Didn't you follow up? It was nice to see parent involvement with the math program. With regard to how Board of Education meetings are run, I have a few suggestions. The meeting should be called to order at 8 p.m. You should not be moseying out here at 8:15, 8:20, or even later. That is rude and disrespectful to the public who is waiting. If you have so much to say in executive session, meet earlier more frequently. Number 2, presentation should be posted when the agenda is posted the Friday prior to a meeting. Interested parties can review the document. The presentation then does not have to be read to the public in its entirety. You have to admit that the past few presentations have been quite lengthy. Streamline them, unless presentations are being made lengthy by design. Number 3, allow the public a direct question and answer period. Sometimes questions, comments fall through the cracks or maybe not answered to the questioner's satisfaction. An actual dialogue would help to solve this. If you put some of these suggestions into action, public comment might not be occurring after midnight. Thanks.
So it's an early one tonight. Tom Volcho, 40 Overlook Avenue. Just a couple of concerns. I see on the agenda that you're I don't know if you're past it or not, or if it's an executive session thing, retroactively passing a huge increase in the payments to the special education law firm from $30,000 is what you planned, and now we're up to $170,000. Why does this trouble me? I talked to a couple of parents of special needs children, and they've independently, before even mentioning anything about these expenditures, are of the mindset that the special ed director of special services, is unnecessarily bringing things to litigation, such that one parent has told me they had to dip into her and her husband's retirement account to pay for legal representatives. I mean, that's just not the way to treat people. Even the judges said, why is this in court? This should have been handled in the district. So I think this is something we should really look into and think about the law firms. No offense to you, sir. I know you're from the Cleary Giacobbe et al. Law firm. That law firm, people I've talked to, Roseland and a couple of other districts, I can't repeat in public the word that they used to describe Matthew Giacobbe. The nicest word was political. And so I'm a little concerned. I think we should get off on a new foot. Mr. Rutsky brought that law firm with him from Roseland. He worked with them for 3 years. I don't know if he told you this on the July 2014, his first Board of Ed meeting, where it was approved to bring that law firm into our district. I'm worried about the spurious generation of billable hours. I don't know. I mean, how do we know? Some of the paper shuffling is billed at $145 an hour. That's worrying. So I think we should try to get off on the right foot. Maybe even going back to a board attorney who, doesn't necessarily, maybe wants to minimize billable hours. I think some of these steps we should start to think about taking. So thank you for hearing my concerns. And one other thing. On the Gregory account, $12,000 to audit an account whose balance is $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. It's a big chunk of the auditing firm's expenditure. I think it's about $64,000 for the audit of the district, and then you're spending $12,000 to audit a Gregory student activity account. I mean, it just sounds kind of insane to spend $12,000 on an account that has a $4,000 to $5,000 balance. I think there's there's a possible issue there that we probably don't want to go into too much, but you already know. And I think we should really think about how much we're spending on different things for what it's worth. So, thank you.
Susan Duarte, 14 Coing Place. I was just wondering what the status is of the ESL program. It's getting close to the end of June. Teachers will be leaving, in 2 days. It wasn't on the agenda tonight. Is it not going to happen next year? Could you let us know?
Hi, Melissa Evans, North Coing Place. Just that there's two of us. The lady right before me took my question. I also want to know more about the ESL, especially considering it could be affecting my school, Gregory, directly. I've heard that if it goes through, we'd end up using the trailers again for the fifth graders, which is a concern for me, because does that mean now that voting would go back into the main school building? I know Ms. Thompson and Susan have worked very hard to get it out of our school, at least the main school, and I'd hate to see it go back in, so I'd like to find out more how, if the plan goes through, how it might affect us.
So, good evening. My name is Tisha McKenzie, and I am located at 10 Hepworth Place in, of course, West Orange. I just wanted to echo what the gentleman said earlier regarding making certain that the board is looking at who we maintain relationships with, specifically as it relates to the firms that we engage for special education and so forth. I mean, we talk about the amount of money that it costs as taxpayers, but I think that it's important that you be fiscally responsible and responsive to us as taxpayers as it relates to who we are engaging ourselves in relationships with and how those relationships are actually impacting the individuals who live within the district.
Thank you. Anyone further? Seeing no one, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Okay, we'll take, I guess, responses from the board. Mr. Alper, anything? Is there any other questions or comments from the public?
Echo everything that Mrs. McAbee said about Michelle Thompson. We're really going to miss her. I don't think there's anything else for me to respond to personally.
Okay, Ms. Mordecai?
Sure, I'll just respond to one thing because it's come up a few times. Mr. Volshoy, I know that you Oprah quite a bit, so you can confirm this. Mr. Giacobbe was actually working for us before Mr. Rutsky started here. Mr. Giacobbe was our labor counsel and our negotiations counsel. And we had him while Mr. O'Neill was interim superintendent, so you can double check me. I'm positive I'm right. And we later hired him after Mr. Cristiano retired as our regular counsel. But he still helps us with negotiations and labor. And his colleague is here at the board table with us, and I'm sure he knows as well. Mr. Giacobbe was already on staff then while Mr. Cristiano was here. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Schwartzbaum.
I just would like to address one thing that Mr. Volshoy talked about. In doing audits, one doesn't look, especially given the allegations, it's not a cost-benefit analysis. One does not look at and say, oh, it was $10, therefore, if I spend more than $10, I believe that you brought this, a group brought it up, and we as a board retained a special investigator. So given that we took that very seriously, that we need to look at not a cost-benefit analysis, but to have a report that is independent, and therefore we can, once we get that report, that then we can make our own assessments and what we need to do. So therefore, not all decisions are made on a cost-benefit analysis. I think you would concur with that.
Robertson?
First, I'll start off by kind of dovetailing on what Mr. Schwartzbaum was talking about. First, the audit covers a broader period of time. Number one, it's a new audit. It's a different auditing firm from the one who generated the original 2016 report. So once again, given the seriousness of the matters in hand, it's not per Mr. Schwartzbaum, it's not a one-to-one cost benefit. We'd prefer that we just want to make sure it's independent. We just want to make sure it's well done. Make sure we've done our due diligence. And I do want to congratulate Michelle on her retirement as well, and thank her for the years of service. In terms of the OPA request, Ms. Bennett, if you submit OPA request, it should be processed appropriately through the normal, open public channels, and that would go through the business office. So let us know if you have a problem with that. Ms. DeRose, who is teacher and taxpayer, great suggestions. We apologize for coming late to the meeting. You're right, that's not appropriate. We should have, and I probably talked too long in making that happen. And then we actually got lost in the halls on the way from the other side of the building. Just thought I'd let you know that. It's embarrassing, but it happens. But we won't do that again. We'll be on time. In terms of the one-to-one allowing direct response, that's a great idea that we should discuss further, because then you're answering the question right as somebody's asked it. And sometimes when you have 20, 30, 40, questions, 10 or 15 people later, it's easy to either miss a question or not to have interpreted it correctly in the answer. On the flip side, what does happen sometimes is that you can find sometimes linkages between multiple questions. But we should definitely look at your suggestion. It sounds like it could be more efficient. What is it? Presentations being lengthy and making sure that they're posted with the agenda. You're absolutely right. It should be posted with the agenda, so you have a chance to read ahead and do your analysis and stuff. That's fair enough. And lengthy, sometimes it's going to be that way because you're dealing with, if you're dealing with K to 12 and something like math, or it is what it is. They'll shorten it as much as possible, and they really tried to tonight. But we hear you loud and clear, and trust me, when we're here till midnight or 1:30 a.m., we feel the same way. Let me see. Mr. Valcho, I forgot to mention too, and looking at and not only Mr. Valcho, but Ms. McKenzie, and looking at our various associations and the law firms, that is something we're looking at. All of our relations very closely, and how the spending is done. And I think you heard some comments related to that, making sure we get more reports, being able to evaluate something as we go along, and having outs in the contract if we feel that we're not getting exactly what we need. That is addressed. We hear you loud and clear, and we think that's just as important as you do, both of you. What's the last one? Did anybody address ESL? ESL, as of right now, it's tabled. Ms. DeMendez and her team are going back and trying to do all the due diligence possible. And to your point earlier, or is that actually Mrs. DeRosa's point? Yeah, you're right. April 25th, 2016 is burned into my memory. And we do have to make sure that once we hear, we actually follow up and make sure that the things that we say we're going to implement become not just part of an ongoing discussion, but become part of process. So, maybe we even look at how that process can be, I won't say codified, but institutionalized better, so it doesn't become a recurring discussion and becomes more a standard of operations. Hear you loud and clear on that too. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Real quick, my comments, Ms. McAbee, I share congratulations on wishing Ms. Thompson a happy and healthy retirement. Ms. Bennett, the OPA request for Mr. Rutsky's resume, it should not take 3 or 4 times. That should have been received a long time ago. Mr. Rosa, I share, I guess, your opinion about the meetings taking too long to get to public comment. I know the board has talked briefly about how restructuring the meeting could be so that we can have the public comment earlier in the meeting as opposed to 11 o'clock, 11:30, 12 o'clock. each night, sometimes even later. It's not by design, it's just sometimes presentations or things get a little too long, in my opinion. To Mr. Volso, I don't know if you were here in the beginning, but we removed item number 2, which was the $12,000 fee to the law firm for the Gregory Elementary School audit. So that item was removed from, and we did not vote on that, and that was not passed. It was just taken off the agenda as well. And as far as the ESL stuff goes, it is in a holding pattern, and it's tabled for now. Certainly, our next board meeting is July 16th. I don't know. My personal opinion is it's something that needs to be done, not this school year, the following school year. So we're going to work with the administration, the board, to make sure if we can get it on, not this school year, the following school year, and roll it out in a timely manner and make sure everything is in course with the program. That's all I have. I do need a comment.
Yes, I just want to say, add my congratulations to Ms. Thompson for retiring, and congratulations to the class of 2018.
Okay, I need a motion to move back into executive session where no action will be taken.
I make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.